Hello and welcome back to Knitting Nicely. I'm Danielle Chauvet, your knitting coach. If you like to learn knitting stitches with me, please like and subscribe.
Okay, so in this video we're going to learn how to do fisherman's rib in the round. And I've got a circular needle that is way longer than I need for what I'm doing. This is just a demonstration, so I only have 32 stitches cast on here using the long tail method. So I'm gonna show you how to do the magic loop method as well. So I just divide my stitches in half, which would be 16, and then I'm gonna pull a loop out from the middle of these stitches. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Pull up a loop out of there, and then I'm gonna join in the round. And the way I like to join in the round is I bring both ends to the end of my 2 needles, making sure that I have not twisted anything. It's just a circle. And then I take the first stitch off the end of my left needle and the first stitch off the end of my right needle, and I slip that onto my left needle and slip the stitch from my left needle onto my right needle. That. And then I'm ready to work in the round. Now obviously I cannot work the stitches as they are because I can't move my needles. They're stuck together. So the way the magic loop goes is you pull the needle, your right needle, which is the bottom one, all the way out, leaving a little bit of your cable needle of a loop. So I'm gonna do that right now. I'm gonna move these out of the way. Okay, and I'm gonna pull this bottom one out. Okay, so now that makes it so that I have enough room to do the knitting on across these 16 stitches. Now for fisherman's rib, you do need a setup round, and for the setup round you are just doing basically a 1x1 rib, which means that you're just going to do a knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 all the way around the circle. So let me find my working yarn here, and we'll go around the circle. And the first one is a knit 1. Whoop. Get that back on there. Okay, knit 1, purl 1. And we're going to go all the way around the entire round with knit 1, purl 1. And I'll show you how to work these bottom stitches with the magic loop once I get to the end of this part. Purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Okay, now I need to move my cable needle around so that I can knit these 16 stitches. So I'm going to pull on this cable until my needle comes to those stitches, and then I'm going to pull this cable out. I kind of hold on to all of my stitches with my left hand. I pull this needle out until there's just a little bit of a loop, and then I push these stitches that I'm going to work to the end of my left needle, and now I'm ready to knit those stitches with my right needle. So I make sure I'm not twisting anything again, and my last stitch was a purl stitch, so now my first stitch is going to be a knit stitch. And I like to kind of keep the cable needle close to my working left needle so that it doesn't create like a gap between the stitch I worked and the stitch I'm about to work. So then my next stitch will be the knit stitch. So that's a knit, and sometimes I give a little tug too, keep that from causing a little ladder right there, and then continue on down the last 16 stitches, which is the knit, purl again. Knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, all the way to the end. And the last stitch is a purl. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull on this cable, which is is now going to be my left needle. So the stitches are going to be ready to knit. And I pull this one out so I can use it. Now this is the start of the first round. That one that we just did was called the setup round. So this one is round 1. And this is where we're going to start doing our fisherman's rib. There's only 2, besides the setup round, there's really only 2 rounds that you'll just keep repeating over and over again. So the first one is we're going to do a knit, but we're not going to knit into the stitch that's on the needle. Instead, we're going to knit into the stitch below the needle, which is right here. So let's do that. Okay. Then you're just going to purl like normally. Just purl right into that stitch. Then you're going to do the same thing as we did before. Or normally we would knit into this stitch that's on the needle, but instead with fisherman's rib, you're going to knit into the stitch that's below the needle. So this little loop is from our previous round. This is actually called knit 1 below. So we're going to knit into this stitch like that. Then purl like normal. Then knit 1 below again. So not into this stitch, but the stitch below it. And it's going to feel funny because you're like, okay, but what about this? What's going to happen to this? Nothing happens to it. It releases and it's just sitting there and it's just loose. And that's what kind of creates the nice elasticity that a fisherman's rib, I like to call it squishiness, that a fisherman's rib will give you. So we just go all the way around, purl like normal, and knit 1 below instead of into the stitch that's on the needle. There we go. 1 below, purl, knit 1 below, purl. Now I gotta change my needles. So my pull on this table, get this needle ready, and pull on this needle so I can use it. Now we're ready to do another knit 1 below. So knit 1 below, purl, knit 1 below, purl, all the way to the end of the round. It's really a really easy pattern once you understand it and get it going into a nice rhythm. As long as you remember which round you are on. That's the tricky part too. You gotta remember which one you're on. Okay, so that's the end of round 1. Here's round 2. We're just gonna switch it up. Instead of knit 1 below, we're gonna purl 1 below. And we're gonna knit as normal. So this is our knit stitches. We're just gonna knit right into that stitch that's on the needle. Okay. Tug starting to ladder there. Okay. And then instead of purling into the stitch that's on the needle, we're gonna purl into the stitch that's below the needle. So we gotta purl into that stitch underneath that. Let's do that again. So knit is just the normal knit stitch, but the purl on round 2 is purling into the stitch below the needle, so down here. And you know, gotta bring your yarn to the front like you normally do for purl. Just like that. Knit, purl 1 below, knit, purl 1 below, knit. Oh, look what I did. Isn't that funny?
I used my tail.
Okay, so that means I have to, what's called tink. So tinking on Fisherman's rib is the same as, you know, any other tinking, but because we were knitting or purling into one stitch below, we actually can't just tink it. We actually kind of have to manipulate the stitches a little bit, okay? So I've purled into that stitch below, but now I've got to catch that other stitch that wasn't caught before. So this is the stitch that should be on the needle, and this is the stitch that should be below the needle. So I need to get this stitch back down below that needle. Okay, there, now it's fixed. I'll do the same for this one. Okay, and this is another purl, one below, so I've got to kind of manipulate the stitches back to where they should be. So this is the stitch that should be on the needle. This is the one that should be below it. So I'm going to slip that one over the top and off, and then put this one back on my left needle. Okay. Same with this. Gotta switch these all back to where they go. Isn't knitting fun? When you make a mistake, you get to learn a little bit more about those little stitches and how they line up on the needles. Okay, so I'm back to here. Now, where did I start using my working yarn? That is the question. Or when did I stop using it? Oh good, I stopped using it right here. Look at that. Yay, that just means that I can go ahead and start using my working yarn like I should be. Okay, so let's start round 2 over again. So knit like normal, and then purl but one below. Knit like normal, purl one below. Knit a normal stitch, don't purl into this stitch that's on the needle, purl into the one that's below the needle, that little bump. Okay, under the bump. Knit like a normal stitch, purl one below. And then just do that with your working yarn, not your tail, all the way around the round. Okay, gotta get my needle set up again. So we're pulling on this cable, get that needle ready, and pulling this one out so I can use it. And we're on round 2 again, just the second half of round 2. So regular knit stitch, and then purl one below. Whoops. A regular knit stitch, purl one below. All right, we'll just keep doing that all the way to the end of the round. Okay. And that's pretty much all there is to it. You're just going to repeat round 1, which if you remember is knit one below and then purl like a normal purl stitch, and then knit one below, purl, knit one below, purl. And then round 2 is knit one normal, purl one below, knit one normal, purl one below. And then you end up with a nice little fisherman's rib. Look how stretchy that is. Hard to see how stretchy it is because I've got my long tail cast on here that's not as stretchy, but fisherman's rib is very, very stretchy and very, very squishy. I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed watching my mistakes and maybe learning from them. See you next time.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed watching my video, be sure to subscribe so you can be notified when new videos are posted. Happy knitting!